liquid IV. I really do. Just before we started recording, I went to my refrigerator, got my big glass of liquid IV that's always sitting in there, and I gulped it down. I have trouble meeting those hydration demands that you see all over the place. This is making it super easy. I feel like it is a delight to drink liquid IV to keep myself hydrated. And now that summer's here, I am going to keep taking it to the gym. I'm going to take it on my hikes. I'm going to make sure that I always have a supply on hand. It just is really a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's true. It's just one stick of liquid IV delivering superior hydration to water alone. It's 3 times more hydrating than the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Plus, it's got 8 vitamins and nutrients, and it's hydration for endurance, mental clarity, and overall well-being.
They've got 4 delicious sugar-free flavors. I love the lemon lime. I also am totally digging the raspberry melon. It's a 0 sugar hydration solution. It's got no artificial sweeteners. It's clinically tested. It hydrates more than water alone. It's just terrific.
You can even pair liquid IV flavors with your summer activities. So you could take sugar-free white peach to the pool for some sunbathing. Liquid IV is a must-have for your bag of summer necessities.
So turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code Fluster at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration using promo code Fluster at liquidiv.com.
I'm telling you, you're going to love it. You're verbalizing for them, you're articulating for them the reasons that maybe they're telling these lies, and just let it be there. Let it hang there for a while, and then maybe bring the conversation up a little bit later. But think of it as your goal is not to punish kids for lying. Your goal is to make telling the truth something that you can handle and that they can handle, even though it's uncomfortable.
Welcome to Season 6 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we talk about a family's anxiety and all the big feelings, too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious, and I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author, and I've been a therapist for over 30 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll give you concrete steps to take and the words to say. Hey, Robin.
Hey, Lynn.
We got a question in the podcast group, and it was a very simple, straightforward question. And it said, will you talk about lying?
Yeah. And if you're not a part of our Facebook group, please join so that you can suggest episodes and ask questions as well.
Yeah, we see and read everything that you guys put on the Facebook group. So we appreciate the ideas. So keep them coming. All right. So here's the deal with lying. Here's the truth about lying. I'm sure somebody else has said that in the past. It's just begging to be said.
That just took me a second. Wow. Okay. I'm going to sit up straight now.
Yeah, sit up straight now. Adults lie all the time.
Yes.
We lie all the time. And we lie, oftentimes we lie because we're just trying to make an excuse for something that we're embarrassed about, or we don't want to hurt somebody's feelings. We're trying to get out of something. So there's something you don't want to do. So you say, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you for inviting me, but I've got other plans. You don't really have other plans.
They're called white lies.
Yeah, white lies. And we do that all the time. So what's interesting to me with the lying is that parents really freak out when their kids lie, even though we have modeled lying for them and even encourage them to lie a lot. Like, I don't know if you ever got the talk or gave the talk to your kids. I certainly gave the talk to my kids that at a birthday party, if somebody gives you, for example, the Star Wars Lego set that you already have, you say, oh my gosh, thank you so much. What a nice gift. You don't say like, oh, I already have this one. We teach kids how to lie politely. We teach kids how to fudge the truth. And in some families, we also talk a lot about lying to protect secrets because there are things that we don't want people to know about our family. So when parents are concerned or freaking out about lying in their kids, first and foremost, it's normal. We do it all the time. And there are different kinds of lying. And that's probably what we want to talk about the most is when lying is really a problem. How do we address it when it shows up? What's developmentally normal? And of course, how not to freak out.
You referenced this actually in another episode but it wasn't the topic of the episode. And you just dropped this great little nugget of wisdom about children often are lying because they don't know how to manage the discomfort that will come from the consequence of saying something, which sometimes those lies feel more serious to us because as adults, we're typically lying where the consequence is a different type. It's usually like a beneficial consequence.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of reasons kids lie. One is because they got caught doing something that they don't want to get caught doing. I mean, we all know that funny image of the little kid that has chocolate all over their face. Yes. And you say, "Oh, were you eating the chocolate?" There's that funny video.
Nope. That's my favorite one.
And then, there's the other one with the little girl who say, "You have chocolate over your face." And she tells this story that she was eating the ramen noodles and then she was washing her face. And the parent says, "With chocolate?" And she says, "Yup." It's just this creative way of trying to sort of figure out how to do things. Little kids and big kids and even adults, we don't like being caught doing something wrong. Have you ever gotten pulled over for speeding? I mean, I don't do this anymore. Now I just confess, but they'll say like, "Do you know how fast you were going?" And we always are like, "No, I'm sorry, officer. I didn't realize how fast I was going." Now I'm like, "Yeah, I was going 72. But we do it because we're trying to preserve our dignity. We're trying not to get caught. We don't want to get in trouble.
We're avoiding the friction that the truth would bring.
Exactly. We are avoiding the friction that the truth would bring. Yeah. That's probably why most people lie most of the time.
Yes. I think that's right. It's like a whole different way of looking at lying. If you're calling someone dishonest, that's a very layered thing to say about someone. The reality is there's so many different implications.
Right. And different reasons why you're doing it.
It's just an interesting thing to think about. This is a bigger conversation. What would be the parameters of the kind of honesty that we always hope that we're modeling and hoping our children copy us? And then what is the language we might want to use when we're discussing white lies and how white lies might be an indication of empathy or other things like that too? They have like an extra layer of skill built into them.
Well, as you're talking, I'm thinking that the level of honesty that you engage in often has to do with the level of connection or intimacy with the person that you're talking to. Because we tend to do white lies with people that we have more superficial relationships with, or it's not really necessary that we tell the truth and we're never going to see that person again or whatever. And we tend to value honesty when we're really thinking about important relationships in which we want somebody to know what we're thinking, what we're feeling, what were the consequences of their actions. When you're being honest with somebody, you really are saying the friction is worth it. Like, I'm going to step into this place of friction because it's going to get us to a good place. Where if it's just you're talking to your kid's third grade teacher and you don't really like her and you're not going to see her again, you don't need to go to the friction place because what's going to be the result of it doesn't really matter to you very much.
I'm going to date ourselves.
Okay, as usual.
Because I'm going to bring up Sex and the City really fast. So for the women of a certain age who grew up with that show, when people would say, what was it about that show that really resonated for women? It really wasn't the comedy around sex and dating. My theory is the reason why it meant so much to us is that we saw modeled authentic friendship among women that said the difficult things. They would fight and they would be honest with each other and they would challenge each other. Why are you dating him? Don't sell your house. What are you doing? Like, they did that. And we saw women who were so connected that they risked arguing. They risked sharing difficult truths. I really hope most listeners have that with a group of friends. I actually don't think that's that common.
I don't think so either. But as you say that, I was just watching a clip from Sex and the City, came up on like an Instagram reel or something. And the four of them were sitting around the table at brunch or whatever that was often a scene in the show. And they were having a conversation where they were doing exactly what you're talking about. And they weren't lying. And there was friction and there was discomfort, but they were speaking the truth. So I think you're right. And I think that's probably something that a lot of women in particular don't really experience. We're afraid to be honest. And so again, if we're talking about lying, how often do we as women model that for our kids? How often do we shy away from discomfort? I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience I have had where I've said something to an adult in my kid's presence, and then later they've said to me, you weren't saying what you really felt, or that wasn't the truth. Or even as I got older, like, way to lie to get yourself out of that one, Mom. I mean, they are hearing it. They are witnessing it.
I think we should go over what does it mean to really live with truth as an individual with healthy relationships? And then how do we make sure that we're doing that for ourselves? And how are we modeling that for our kids? And what is the lying that maybe we could come up with even a better word for when we're talking to our kids about it?
Yeah. And I think also it would be helpful if I just went over some of the very developmental appropriate ways that kids lie so that parents don't have to freak out that they have a liar on their hands.
Yeah, we don't like the labels like that. It's developmental.
It's developmentally appropriate.
Yeah, it's developmentally appropriate. That's what I meant to say. Okay, we'll be right back. So are you trying to find the perfect gift for someone special in your life, but you're feeling a little overwhelmed? You don't know where to start? Finding a truly unique gift that they'll actually love can be challenging and frustrating. And that's why I'm so excited that I discovered Songfinch. It is such an amazing, thoughtful gift, and it's so easy and fun to make.
Robin, you use Songfinch to create the most amazing song for our family because we have this incredibly fun celebration. And the song that was created that then you put to a video and sent to all of us, it was just so special. I think we all cried, of course, and we just treasure it.
I thought the process was so easy. I mean, I sobbed just giving the songwriter all the information to create the song. And I really thought that he nailed it. I was very impressed with the quality. It's not some AI-driven experience. These are real songwriters putting very real human emotions that you tell them to into your songs.
Whether your song is for Father's Day, we've got a lot of celebrations coming up. We've got graduations, weddings, anniversaries, whatever it is that you want to help celebrate in a wonderfully moving way, start your song now to lock in one of Songfinch's top artists.
For a limited time, Songfinch is letting our listeners upload their songs to Spotify for free. So you and the lucky person you gift it to can listen to it anywhere, anytime. Go to songfinch.com/fluster and start your song. After you purchase, you'll be prompted to add Spotify streaming for your original song for free, which is a $50 value.
The URL is songfinch.com/fluster. Don't forget to share your song with us too. songfinch.com/fluster.
Are you that one friend in the group that loves to treat yourself? I mean, it's okay. Honestly, we all do it. But maybe you opt for that extra legroom seat on the plane because your vacation starts that moment.
Maybe you're the one that just opts for that extra 10-minute massage at the end of the pedicure just because it feels so good. And why not treat yourself?
Well, if you treat yourself to the top options with everything in life, why settle when finding a doctor? It's your health, after all. So enter ZocDoc, the place where you can find and book tens of thousands of top-tier doctors, all with verified patient reviews.
ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online.
We're talking about booking appointments with tens of thousands of top-rated, patient-reviewed, credible doctors and specialists. The typical wait time to see a doctor booked on ZocDoc is between just 24 and 72 hours. That's it. You can even score same-day appointments.
So if you've got young people in your life like I do that need medical attention, need good doctors, and often need immediate appointments, then use ZocDoc like I have. Go to ZocDoc.com/fluster and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today.
That's ZocDoc.com/fluster. ZocDoc.com/fluster. This message is sponsored by Greenlight. As your kids get older, some things about parenting get easier. I could just tell my kids to walk home from school now. I don't have to pick them up every day. But other things don't, like having that conversation about money. The fact is, kids won't really know how to manage their money until they're actually in charge of it. That's where Greenlight can help. Greenlight is a debit card and money app made for families. Parents can send money to their kids and keep an eye on kids' spending and saving, while kids and teens build money confidence and lifelong financial literacy skills. With the Greenlight app, kids learn how to save, invest, and spend wisely thanks to games that teach money skills in a fun, accessible way. The Greenlight app also includes a chores feature where you can set up one-time or reoccurring chores customized to your family's needs, and you can reward kids with allowance for a job well done. This was a game changer for us because when I finally got my kids to do the chores, I can't say that I was always super great at remembering to pay them, and we couldn't keep track, and Greenlight has set us straight. Millions of parents and kids are learning about money on Greenlight, and it's the easy, convenient way for parents to raise financially smart kids and families to navigate life together. Sign up for Greenlight today and get your first month free when you go to greenlight.com/fluster. That's greenlight.com/fluster. to try Greenlight for free. Greenlight.com/fluster.
Okay, we're back. Robin, we're going to talk basics here, the basics of lying, because we've already said it happens all the time. So how do you deal with it? And of course, it's not an emergency, because your 4-year-old is not lying so that they can embezzle from the family business. So we don't have to freak out about it yet. So here's a few things to know about kids who are lying when they're little and even when they get a little bit bigger. So they normally lie because they're trying to get out of something, because they don't want to get into trouble. Also know that little kids lie because sometimes they're storytelling and they're trying it on for size. They want to see if they can get away with it. They want to see what your reaction is going to be. And they can oftentimes see telling a lie as funny. Like sometimes it's their attempt to humor you or humor themselves. It's kind of a game for them. If you say to a little kid, "What did you have for lunch?" And they say, "I had a cookie." And you're like, "A cookie?" And you know that they had a hot dog. But sometimes they're trying to say that because they want to see what your response is going to be. And I think what's interesting with little kids lying is that if they say something totally outrageous, we find it funny. And if they say something that seems like they're just skirting around the truth, then we get more concerned. But it really is the same thing for them. They're just trying to see what it's like to not tell the truth. So don't freak out about that. Also, kids lie just like adults lie because they're trying to impress. And so they lie to their peers. They exaggerate things. They want to make themselves look good in situations. So they might lie. You might hear like a 4th grader. They might say like, "Hey, did you get a hit in the baseball game?" And the 4th grader will say like, "Yes, I got 2 doubles and a triple." And you're thinking, no, they did not. They struck out and they got a pop fly out, but they're trying to impress. Just like adults might ramp up their salary. We know, I talk about this in the anxiety audit, people lie about the hours that they work all the time. Know that kids do that to impress also. Totally normal. Don't have to freak out about that.
Okay, let's just go to the basics. Your kid has a hot dog for lunch. They tell you they had a cookie. What do you say?
You say, "Oh, you're so silly." Or you say, "Well, that is very interesting because I thought for sure you had a hot dog." Now, if it's something that you feel like they should tell you the truth about, then you can ask for a redo. So if you know they're lying, if you're absolutely sure that they're lying, say, for example, you say, "Did you put your laundry away that I left on your bed?" And they say, "Yes, I did." And you're asking them that question because you saw that they didn't. You can say, "Well, that is a very interesting response because I think that the laundry is still on your bed." Or you can say, "Now I want to believe you, but I'm not sure you're telling the truth, so I'm just going to go up and check right now." And then lots of times they'll be like, wait. You could call them out on it, but give them a chance to do a redo. So if you catch them in a lie, say, "Okay, I think you and I both know that you're not telling the truth. Would you like to try that again?" And give them a chance to correct it, give them a chance to be more accurate. So you're basically saying to them, "I understand what you're doing. I see it. I'm not going to freak out. and I'm going to help you walk through the process of telling the truth. This is one of those situations in which the why questions are not helpful. Because if you say to your child or your teenager, why did you lie to me? They're probably going to just tell you another lie, right? So go with a statement of fact. I know that's not the truth. Would you like to do a redo? Or how can you correct that? Or you just told me a fib, because you can also call it a fib. You just told me a fib. How would you like to correct the record, please? Because that gives them an opportunity to feel a little bit of embarrassment, right? A little bit of what we want them to feel. We want them to feel a little bit uncomfortable because they just got caught in a lie, but it gives them a chance to save face. And then experientially, they walk through the process of telling a lie, feeling uncomfortable, correcting it. And that's a good process.
It sounds like calling them out in a pretty neutral state is very key here.
Yeah. I mean, the thing you're trying to convey is that telling the truth, oftentimes, if you're owning up to something, particularly kids lie when they've done something wrong, adults lie when they've done something wrong, you're giving them an opportunity to tell the truth and to have the experience of you being able to tolerate the truth. Because one of the patterns you want to pay attention to as a parent is that if you don't tolerate mistakes very well, if you don't tolerate screw ups, if you don't tolerate a bad grade on a test, it is more likely that your child is going to lie to cover it up because they don't think you can handle the truth.
Or they don't want to deal with your reaction.
Correct. Right. So if you punish, if you freak out, if you belittle, if you roll your eyes, if you can't stay pretty neutral, pretty regulated, they're going to learn that lying is a better option for them.
Right. There are a lot of households where the mantra is like, don't upset your mother, don't upset your father. Right. Those kids are going to learn to avoid telling the truth.
Correct. And then it becomes a successful pattern. Remember, when things work, kids do it again. So if they lie and nobody calls them out on it in a solid, mature way, if it works that they can tell a lie and not upset their mother or protect their father or protect themselves from anger, then they're going to grow up thinking that that's a really good strategy to use when you've screwed up, when you've done something wrong. It's along the lines of, and I've talked about this before, I'm sure, but when people say, well, I just don't apologize, I have no patience for that. Not being able to apologize is a really lousy approach to handling relationships. And if you are a liar, then that is also not good for relationships. I think I may have told you I had this adult person in a professional capacity who would lie to me about things, like random things, and I knew he was lying. A colleague, and it was trying to make himself look better than he was, but it was so bizarre. It was things that I knew he was lying about, and it was so weird, and I honestly lost total respect for the guy.
Well, I think he was overwhelmed with your power, success, and influence. Can you blame him?
Well, he didn't do himself any favors because the lies were not even necessary. You know, it would be sort of things like, oh, I had lunch at this restaurant. And he said, oh, I did too. I mean, I'm making this up now. That wasn't the exact lie. But I was like, I know you didn't. I know you did. It was sort of like I felt like I was talking to the toddler with the chocolate on his face. It was just bizarre.
So I don't want to sidetrack, but I keep thinking of this. Of the thousands of listeners of this episode, there might be one other person besides me who loved the movie Ishtar, which was always called one of the worst movies of all time, but it really wasn't, okay? It got that rap very undeservedly.
Was Warren Beatty in that movie?
And Dustin Hoffman, yes. And so they were horrible singer-songwriters, and their big breakout hit was called Tellin' the Truth Can Be Dangerous Business. And that's all I'm hearing as you're talking. And if you watch the movie, it's like, and if you could admit that you can play the accordion, no one will hire you in a rock and roll band.
That was a lyric in the song?
That was the main lyric of the song, yes. It's a great movie, and I don't think you can stream it anywhere.
So nobody has the ability to sort of see if what you're saying is true. It is. It's the butt of a lot of jokes, the movie Ishtar.
Yeah, there's a documentary actually on how the hype around it kind of destroyed the movie. Dustin Hoffman and Warren Beatty are no dummies. It's a great movie.
Warren Beatty was just my like teenage crush. I loved him.
Oh, was he? Yeah. I loved Heaven Can Wait.
Oh,
When that came out.
yeah.
That was such a great movie.
It's my favorite movie. Yeah. Heaven Can Wait. And Reds with Diane Keaton.
Never saw that one.
What?
Yeah.
All right. Well, also, I loved Warren Beatty and Timothy Hutton.
I almost got to meet Warren Beatty and Annette Bening, but I didn't. But I was so close, and I was going to bring up Ishtar.
That would be a pretty badass move to meet Warren Beatty and bring up Ishtar. But you would give him feedback that probably he never ever hears. You guys might have become really good friends.
No. So there's actually a ton of fans of Ishtar. But anyway, the whole song is about telling the truth many people perceive is dangerous business. So they avoid it.
Well, and I think that's what we're trying to say is that you want to convey to your children that telling the truth is not dangerous business, that telling the truth is uncomfortable, but as we said earlier, the truth will set you free. Sometimes, see, that's the tricky part, is that we don't want to go global with this. Those white lies, those lies to preserve people's feelings, those lies that we tell so that we don't have to be mean, there's a place for those. So it is tricky.
We have a friend of one of my kids who, when they were young, they actually told a lot of lies. And it was a thing that my kid brought up and said, this is really annoying. They tell a lot of lies. They outgrew it. Somewhere around the age of maybe 10, 9 or 10, it went away. But it was absolutely a part of kind of saying things, testing the waters, saying braggy things, saying things that honestly weren't actually being a braggart is not in the character of this child. And it isn't now. This child is not a braggart. This child has a lovely moral compass. For those parents who have kids who notice they're doing a lot of storytelling, it really can be developmental and not something that you need to freak out about, that there's something wrong with their character.
Right. As you get older, I mean, that's the thing is that we have to recognize that it's a normal developmental stage and it is not a character flaw when you're little. But if you don't allow your children or you don't model for your children the difference between telling the truth and telling a lie or how that can be harmful or that kind of stuff, then it can become a pattern as you move forward in life. And then it does become a problem because kids will pick up on it and teenagers and adults, just like this guy I was telling you about. I had a friend growing up. She lived down the street. And she told a lot of lies about her family and her parents. And it's so interesting when I think back on it now, because this would have been in like 1974, 1975. And her parents were divorced. Even back then, I was probably like 9 and 10. And I was like, she is telling me a story here because she had all these stories about where her dad was. And it was almost like an illustrated storybook, like her dad was a movie producer and her dad was in Hollywood and her dad was traveling in Tahiti. And it was all because she didn't know how to talk about the fact that her parents were divorced and that her dad didn't really come to see her. And I think about how absolutely she was trying to protect herself in our friendship by telling me those stories. I never confronted her about it. I just always would sort of be like, in my head, I would be like, I don't think that's true.
I'm remembering growing up in first grade, there was this girl who was really good at sort of just speaking in gibberish that sounded like a real language, but she kept saying she was speaking a language. It was Spanish, actually. So she would say this thing that was not Spanish, and then she would say, that means, and then she would like give it these really complicated, complex sentences attached to these noises. But we were so young, I was like, okay, I don't speak Spanish. So then I started taking Spanish in first grade. And then I realized she was full of it. Again, here's someone who was telling a story. I confronted her and was like, you told me you spoke Spanish and you don't.
Did you say that in Spanish?
I didn't. It was a first grade class. I learned my colors. I learned to count. But anyway, I realized she was lying and I called her out on it. And she just very neutrally was like, I don't know what you're talking about. All the different ways this can show up. To me, like what I'm hearing is once your kids are a certain age, it's good to unpack it and say, if we were to tell the truth in this situation, what are the consequences? if we didn't tell the truth in the situation and we said X or Y, what are the consequences? For them to start understanding that so that there isn't some sort of global rule about it, but to understand the nuance of what we say and what our meanings are. I mean, it's pretty complicated, actually.
It's very complicated. So say you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh gosh, I think I have a kid that tells these lies and I haven't done the right thing. Or, sort of like when we're talking about anxiety and parents are like, oh no, I've screwed it all up. If you have a child who you are noticing is sort of habitually lying in this way, one of the approaches you can take is that you can say to them, kids and adults lie for all different reasons. And I've been noticing that sometimes when I ask you a question or when you're hanging out with your friends, that you're saying some things that aren't true. And sometimes kids do that because they don't want to get in trouble. Some kids do that because they're afraid that their parents are going to be angry. Sometimes kids do that because they really want to impress their friends and they feel like if they tell a lie about something that they'll be more popular or people will like them better. Have you ever thought about that? Or you can even just say that and not ask the question, but just present to them the reasons. You're verbalizing for them, you're articulating for them the reasons that maybe they're telling these lies, and just let it be there, let it hang there for a while, and then maybe bring the conversation up a little bit later. But think of it as your goal is not to punish kids for lying. Your goal is to make telling the truth, like you say, it's complicated, but make telling the truth something that you can handle and that they can handle, even though it's uncomfortable.
Just wondered if you had an opinion on this when you led in with that example of a conversation using the verb to lie versus using the infinitive to avoid the truth, or some people avoid the truth, because I do wonder if you want to be thoughtful about not affixing the label of liar. Don't call your kid a liar. Don't tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a difference between saying you're a liar. And I think when you said that, you may have been telling, you can say fib, you may have been telling a lie, you may have been telling a fib, or that wasn't exactly the truth right there. So you can use all of that language and go with what sort of makes sense for the age of your child and what they can handle. But you're right, you really want to avoid saying, you're a liar. And if you find yourself repeatedly saying to them, hey, you're lying, if you feel like that comes up over and over and over again, that means that whatever strategy you're using isn't working and you need to step back. And that's when maybe you have that more in-depth conversation about here's what I've noticed and here's what keeps happening. And I'm curious about this. I wonder about this because this is going to be a problem. It's really okay for you to say to your child, if you continue to do this, what I think might happen is that kids are going to notice that you're lying, or that other people are going to be confused about why you're not telling the truth about things. So it's okay to introduce that to them. I have my concerned confusion look that I talk about. I sort of furrow my brow a little bit and I'm like, If you've got a child who continues to do that, even though you're sort of calling them out, you want to sit down and you want to think about, what is it that is making it really hard for them to tell the truth, and to have that conversation with them?
You said this earlier. I just want to repeat it because as I think of this one fib teller in our circle who outgrew it, there's two sort of categories to talk about with your kids. You might avoid the truth because you're thinking about feelings involved, whether you're trying to protect yourself or you're trying to protect somebody else. And then sometimes you're just seeing what'll happen. You're just testing the waters and you're telling a story. But I will tell you that your friends, once they get old enough, they're going to know you're telling a story. And they might not like that very much. Like, it's worth saying, kids don't really like being lied to like this.
Right. So if you think about it in the social context, if you think about the purpose of lying and the difficulty of telling the truth and all that kind of stuff, it helps you parent through this without those labels and recognizing that it really is a pretty normal part of being a human being. One of the things too that you can do, taking a break, like when I had teenagers, which I have young adults now, but taking a break. I used to say when they were little, I would say, I'm really frustrated right now and I have to think about what I'm going to do about this. So I'm going to just take a little break and think about it. You can do that with your kids. If you catch them in a lie and you're really angry at them and you're really disturbed about what they're lying about, it's really okay to say, right now, I know that you're not telling me the truth. I'm going to take a break right now so I can think about how I want to handle this. I want you to take a break and think about it. And maybe when we get back together in a little bit, you can do a redo. So give them that chance, but it's okay for you to take a break and not react immediately to what you just experienced, because it gives you time to just think it through. And that's a really helpful thing to do when you're parenting.
Let's take a break.
All right.
It's hard to find a great mentor who can help you level up. My dream mentor, Martha Stewart. So I was really excited when I heard that she has a class on Masterclass.
Yeah. And, I love to play tennis. And who doesn't want to learn tennis from Serena Williams? I mean, the top player ever, showing you what to do. It's a pretty great opportunity. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode.
I love downloading them before I go on a long plane ride so that I just feel like that time was like the best spent for me.
Yeah, you're traveling and you're also getting relationship advice from Esther Perel, who is incredibly engaging and full of useful information.
If you didn't like to fly, it'd be a really great time to listen to the class on mindfulness by Jon Kabat-Zinn.
Even if you like to fly, who can't use a little Jon Kabat-Zinn while you're traveling?
That's right. Picturing a little bitty Jon Kabat-Zinn. May I help you with your bag? Every time I make scrambled eggs, I think of the class that I took with Gordon Ramsay, from cooking to writing to interior design. Plus, every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass.
Right now, our listeners will get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster.
Masterclass.com/fluster.
Liquid IV. I really do. Just before we started recording, I went to my refrigerator, got my big glass of liquid IV that's always sitting in there, and I gulped it down. I have trouble meeting those hydration demands that you see all over the place. This is making it super easy. I feel like it is a delight to drink liquid IV to keep myself hydrated. And now that summer's here, I am going to keep taking it to the gym. I'm going to take it on my hikes. I'm going to make sure that I always have a supply on hand. It just is really a game changer for me.
Yeah, it's true. It's just one stick of liquid IV delivering superior hydration to water alone. It's 3 times more hydrating than the electrolytes of the leading sports drink. Plus, it's got 8 vitamins and nutrients, and it's hydration for endurance, mental clarity, and overall well-being.
They've got 4 delicious sugar-free flavors. I love the lemon lime. I also am totally digging the raspberry melon. It's a 0 sugar hydration solution. It's got no artificial sweeteners. It's clinically tested. It hydrates more than water alone. It's just terrific.
You can even pair liquid IV flavors with your summer activities. So you could take sugar-free white peach to the pool for some sunbathing. Liquid IV is a must-have for your bag of summer necessities.
So turn your ordinary water into extraordinary hydration with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code FLUSTER at checkout.
That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration using promo code FLUSTER at liquidiv.com.
I'm telling you, you're going to love it. Okay, so now back to the show.
I think this is a very philosophical topic, Lynn. And I think it's so interesting to reflect on this as adults with emotional management vocabulary. What is truth? Which is like, it's like philosophy 101 meets anxiety management 101. And it just makes you rethink all the labels of how we describe human behavior and why we do this stuff.
Well, and think of that expression that I'm hearing it a lot now. You might be hearing it too, is when people say, well, my truth is my truth. I'm like, that's a tricky, this whole idea that if I experienced it and if I felt it and if this is my perception of things, then it must be true. That, as a therapist in the late 80s, early 90s, this idea that if I think it and feel it, that it's my truth really makes me a little uneasy. And when I hear young people now saying, well, my truth is my truth, I feel like we got to be careful with this whole idea of this definition of truth, which really does get a little bit philosophical, doesn't it?
I mean, really, my feelings are my feelings. That's okay. But when you start using truth instead of feelings, that's when it gets a little tricky.
Yeah. And the other thing too, is we've been talking a lot about stories. And one of the things that I say is that both anxiety and depression are really disorders of storytelling, the stories we tell ourselves. And we hear that a lot. It's a little psychobabbly stuff too that I'm not a big fan of when people say, well, you're really just lying to yourself. I'm sort of like, well, okay, whatever. But the idea that we can tell ourselves stories about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future or who we are, it really is interesting when we're trying to be in touch with our perceptions of things or when we're thinking about our feelings or thinking about our reactions. It gets really hard if we really trust our truth more than question it sometimes. Yeah.
I like what you said about it being a pathology of your anxiety and depression can be pathology of your personal storytelling. I don't like the word truth here, and I don't think you do either. The phrase I've always used that I think is better is a false belief. Anxiety and depression, they incorporate false beliefs.
And of course, if we're talking about beliefs and we're talking about rigid beliefs, how do people come to believe that something is true or something is accurate and not give themselves the opportunity to question it or to step back and look at it from different perspectives? All of that rigidity that happens, all of that, this is my truth and my story is my story and I'm sticking to it. All of that is really not helpful as we're trying to sort through things like anxiety and depression and trauma and all the different ways in which things are actually so variable rather than rigid.
What I think is a little confusing and a little too cerebral about my thoughts of what you're saying and what we're talking about in this episode is that we ideally want, as adults, to have a healthy relationship with how we perceive the truth and how we communicate the truth and how we're truthful with our feelings. You can obviously model that. You always talk about the how, which I think is so great too. Like you model how you're feeling and you're being truthful about it.
Right. Think about this example, which I think is probably pretty universal. So you're having an argument with someone. You're having an argument with your sibling or your spouse or your friend, and they confront you about something. And in that moment, it is really hard for you to just say, yeah, it's true. I was really pissed off that that happened. So you come up with this story, you try and change it in a way that makes it more palatable, or you're trying to defend yourself. Those moments of being able to admit, yeah, I really said that, or yes, I did do that, or I did feel that way. That's a very vulnerable place for people to be. When we're being truthful about our feelings, when we're being honest about what pissed us off or what disappointed us, that is a very, very hard skill for most adults, never mind for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. The majority of adult women would suppress their own reactions and verbalize a story that was managing the other person's reaction instead of speaking their truth.
It's hard. And I think the flip side of that is to be on the receiving end of that honesty and being able to accept that and hear that. So say you were late for something and the friend you were meeting, instead of saying, oh no, it's fine, it's totally fine. but the friend really did feel inconvenienced, or the friend felt hurt that they got left out of something. And they say, it was really hurtful to me that blah, blah, blah. If you're on the receiving end of that honesty, don't feel like you have to come back and then defend yourself. You could really just say, I hear what you're saying, and I'm sorry that I hurt you. When somebody speaks to you in an honest, I think that's where we start making excuses too. So I was really upset that you didn't include me. Oh, well, I didn't see your email in time. Or, oh, I'm so sorry. We only had 4 spots available. You just say, I'm really sorry that happened and I didn't mean to hurt you. I apologize for that. Like that kind of honesty is really helpful too.
It's so simple.
It's so simple, but we don't do it, do we?
Yeah.
Some people do it.
It is hard. The years I've lived my life, what I learn is that the relationships that are really important to me, it's always important to be a little uncomfortable. And I think we talked about this at the beginning, is that especially if there's like a friend that I would like to take to the next level and make that friendship even feel closer, like those really best friends, you got to include the honesty.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when you're telling me about the things that you say to your close friends, I'm sort of like, damn, right? I mean, you'll go for it. You are fearless a lot of times in that way, in a wonderful way. And I have one of my very best friends is that way also. She just will say what needs to be said. And it makes some people very uncomfortable. It doesn't make me uncomfortable because I've known her forever. But it's a skill that a lot of people don't develop.
But I would say that it's so worth it. Gosh, it's so worth it.
But I think that you're a lot more willing to be uncomfortable in conversation than most people that I know.
I would agree to that.
Don't you think? Like in a good way. Like you'll just ask the questions or you'll say the thing. Don't you see yourself that way?
I do. And actually, if we're going to like look at what is it about my past that made me sort of focus on those skills, I'll tell you. We did an episode on the mommy wine culture. I grew up in a family filled with a lot of addiction, a lot of drinking. It was never spoken about honestly at all. And as a kid, seeing all of the lies, all of the facades of like how we talked about social drinking and drinking from an early age, I felt starved for the truth.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? I bet a lot of people can relate to that because it can go both ways. People who grow up in those circumstances learn how to lie. They learn how to cover up. They learn how to make sure that nobody knows what's going on. And they bring that into their adulthood. Or like you, they can say, I'm starved for the truth. And I'm not going to continue to tell your story or to perpetuate this lie or to keep this going.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really think that that is what it is.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. Good for you.
I think I'm going to go watch Ishtar if I can find it on a streaming channel.
Well, if you can't find Ishtar, you can find Heaven Can Wait. In our last episode, when we were talking about how I came home from dropping my son off in college and watching Steel Magnolias, Heaven Can Wait, if you feel like you need to also have just like a total sappy movie, Heaven Can Wait would fit the bill as well.
This is advice for if you're over 45.
Right. So perimenopausal movies by Lynn and Robin.
And postmenopausal movies.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
I'm Margaret.
And I'm Amy.
And together we host the podcast, What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood.
Margaret, I would say you're sort of a where are my keys kind of mom.
Correct. Sometimes a where are my kids kind of mom. Well, you're, Amy, more of a we were supposed to leave 35 seconds ago, mom.
I mean, touche. In each episode of What Fresh Hell, we come at a topic from our usually completely opposite perspectives. I bring the research.
And I bring kind of the gimlet eye. Like, is that research really going to work, people?
And almost 10 million downloads later, we're still laughing.
We also talk to experts in the parenting field, plus parents with stories we can all learn from.
We make each other laugh, we challenge each other's assumptions, and we have what we think is the best parenting community on the internet.
Check out What Fresh Hell? Laughing in the Face of Motherhood wherever you listen to podcasts.